Looking over to Manchester City, Paul, we've seen some links pop up between Man City and AC Milan, but those have been mostly about Theo Hernandez. Most recently, they've been linked with Rafael Leao, obviously an incredibly talented player. Would he be an absolutely game-changing signing for Manchester City's attack?
No, he plays on the left side, doesn't he? You saw the way that Savinho played this week at Tottenham. I thought the first half, Manchester City, when the team sheet came out, I said to you, I was in Madrid, I watched Manchester City. They were completely outplayed, and they got done to them what they've done to other teams for a number of years at the Etihad. But actually, the way that they played against Tottenham with the two wide players, Savinho on one wing, Doku on the other wing, Doku even more so. I think Rafael Leao's a top player at 25, Portuguese international. You look at his record this season, though, his goals and assist record. It's not all that for a player that you would expect of his level. He's a top quality player. But for me, it's not an area where Manchester City is glaring that they need, reinforcements. Because the way that Doku played, he played at the weekend against Liverpool, played again against Tottenham, and I think he's out the Liverpool game. He was one of the better ones. I think the way that he got past Trent Alexander-Arnold numerous times, and then you look at what he did to Pedro Porro against Tottenham in the first half. He created Haaland's goal. He created almost a certain goal, and could have had another 3 or 4 assists just in the first half. So listen, Rafael Leao is a top quality player. Yeah, absolutely. When you look at what City have got, do they desperately need the player in that area? No, it's a luxury player. And the thing that we've not spoke about as well, actually, is where Manchester City are. We've not spoken about for a long time with the charges and the FFP and the PSR. You look at the lump that they spent in January. Where does that leave them in the summer? I mean, I don't know that, Pete. You might be better to qualify to answer that question than me. But that great big lump what they've spent in January, that's surely going to affect them because it's in the same year as the summer transfer window. So maybe, buying players like that. Leao's obviously got contract left. Theo Hernandez, they're linked with because he's out of contract in June 2026. So that's potentially an easier, cheaper deal to do. But does that big spending in January have any effect on the summer window?
It will have an effect because I think a lot of those moves were initially planned to happen this summer, but the club decided to bring it forward in January just because how poorly the squad was performing. That's why they've decided to push forward the deals for the Victor Reis, the Kushanovs, obviously Marmoush as well. They paid big money for him, which obviously they had from the Julian Alvarez sale, so that sort of cancels that one out. But like the young signings of Kushanov, Victor Reis, obviously Nico Gonzalez was brought in due to Rodri's injury. So I don't think going into this January, the January window just gone, I don't think if Manchester City were going well and still in contention for trophies, I don't think they'd have probably spent as much as they did in January. I think a lot of that was planned ahead for the summer, so they've done some of their summer business already in the January transfer window. I still think they'll try and do a couple of deals in January in this upcoming summer transfer window. I think a right back when Kyle Walker probably makes his move permanent away from the Etihad, and then probably another central midfielder as well, I think, just to add a bit more legs into that side, especially if De Bruyne was to leave or Bernardo Silva was to leave as well, as he's surprisingly been left out of the start 11 the last couple of games as well, when normally he was one of the first names on the team sheet as well. So yeah, I think it'll definitely have an effect, but I think some of the planned summer transfer window business was brought forward to the January window just because of how badly City were playing.
I think, listen, there's going to be there's a lot of talk in the press and there's some kind of major overhaul at Manchester City, but there is going to be some kind of movement. You look at the players that are linked to the moves potentially away because of their age and where they're at. Do they move John Stones on, Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, Jack Grealish, potentially goalkeeper Edison or Ortega? There is going to be a shuffling of the pack which will allow them financial leeway in a certain way. But actually, when you look at the age of the players that they brought in January, and then you add the likes of Rico Lewis, Oscar Bob, and the players that they've got in that side, Phil Foden, you forget how young he is. Guardiola, I think he's still only 21, 22. You look at the nucleus of that squad that they've got and what they've put together, they're going to be challenging again. They're going to be challenging again very, very soon. Yes, Gundogan may move on, Kevin De Bruyne may move on, Bernardo Silva may move on, Edison may move on, but what he's done already with the age of the squad, with a couple of those additions that we talked about, Leao, Hernandez, that type of player been able to be brought in, it's not going to be long before Manchester City are challenging there and thereabouts again.
And Pete, you mentioned Kyle Walker leaving permanently. Would Tino Livramento be a player that Manchester City would be able to acquire? Obviously, Newcastle probably not looking to sell, but we know their PSR constraints and hoping to keep hold of Isak. Maybe their hand will be forced if the right price is thrown out there.
Yeah, Newcastle definitely wouldn't welcome any interest in Tino Livramento. He's become a key man for Eddie Howe's side. Obviously, he's been very impressive for Newcastle, holding down that right back spot in the team, keeping Kieran Trippier out of the side. And you would imagine it'll be more likely that Trippier will end up leaving St James's Park in the summer rather than Tino Livramento. But obviously, as we've spoken before on previous pods, the whole PSR, FFP sort of cloud that hangs over Newcastle, that maybe they might be forced to sell players to sort of balance the books and allow them manoeuvrability in the window, means that they could be susceptible to offers for any of their players, not just Alex Isak or Livramento or Bruno Guimaraes. That's the situation that Newcastle find themselves in. But as things stand right now, I don't think Eddie Howe would consider letting Livramento go. He is the long-term answer for Newcastle at right back. They've got Lewis Hall at left back as well. So for me, two England internationals now, since making that move to Newcastle, they've really come into their own and really have established themselves as key players in that Newcastle side, and now also in the England squad. So I'm sure the players are happy with how life is going at Newcastle. If Newcastle can qualify for next season's Champions League, it'll obviously boost their chances of keeping hold of their best players, including Livramento. And right now, he's still got 3 years to run on his contract on Tyneside, and I'd be very surprised if Newcastle would even consider selling him, because look, he's still only 22. I think he's going to get better and better. It's great to see him, really, because he had such a bad knee injury as well, which really held him back for a while, but he's bounced back from that, and as I said, on his day, he's one of the best right backs in the Premier League, and I'm sure Newcastle want to see that continue with them, and they want to keep hold of their best players, not lose them like they were forced to in the summer to balance the books.
And Paul, the race for Jamie Bynoe-Gittens is certainly heating up ahead of the summer transfer window. It feels like every top six club or big six club in the Premier League has been linked with him at this point. Do you think Manchester City are the favourites to go out and sign him if they want to make that deal happen?
Like you said, there's going to be more at the table than just Manchester City. And at 20 years old, the experience that he's got this year at Dortmund is only going to stand him in good stead. We know that Dortmund's been a very good harvesting ground for a lot of good young English talent in the past, because they give the players an opportunity to play. I'm not so sure that Manchester City would be the right move for him, because does he play? You know, you look at Manchester City's squad, you look at the rotation that Pep uses and the competitions that they'll be competing in. Yeah, there's an opportunity for him to play, but does he come into that squad and does he play every week? You know, the opportunity that he's got now and the level that he's hit, he's had a taste of the first team. Listen, when you go to a big club, you're not guaranteed to start, but for where he is at the moment, he's contracted till June 2028 at Dortmund. For me, unless the club want him to move him on and get a fee for him, then that's, you know, the potential for the move is there, because we've seen that it's a path that's well trodden. You know, the Bundesliga back to the Premier League, especially for a young English player who's still only 20. Yes, there's a move there, but for me, for him, I'd be wary of coming into a side where you're going to go from playing every week and being a huge part of the side. He's got 7 goals and 4 assists this season. He's clearly enjoying his football. So, you know, is he ready to come back to the Premier League to not necessarily play every week? Yeah, Manchester City will be at the table, but there'll be a lot of others at the table as well. There'll be a lot of clubs in the Premier League that are rebuilding for next season, where he might see more of an opportunity to play regularly more often.